So with that, I want to call on one of our very committed members, and even though she is the youngest member, she was no doubt the wisest. So Morgan Guess, who she is not in high school, she is a 7th grader from Paducah. So Morgan, would you please join me?
It has been an honor for me to serve on this task force. I am grateful to Governor Beshear for allowing me the opportunity to represent Kentucky students. The last year has shown me that there are citizens all across Kentucky who are committed to changing the culture of bullying. I have great hope for Kentucky's future. I also learned that this issue is complex. We have more than a dozen laws in place to protect students. And while they are important, I believe the real change comes from every Kentuckian every day being committed to building a better climate in our schools, in our homes, and across our communities. Kentuckians must continue to take this issue seriously. We must not only report bullying incidents, but we must also stand up when we see someone being bullied. We must create cultures that focus on empathy, on valuing diversity, on being kind, and on building leadership skills. This is a start. This is an important start. This task force has provided a definition that can be used all across the Commonwealth and identified that bullying is truly a public health issue. My hope is that we will commit the mental health resources that are needed for our students. I also ask that schools welcome parents who should be present when a student is being asked by administrators. I think back to my own bullying experience. I was only 8. I was afraid, and I cannot imagine my parents not being in the room while I was being questioned. I believe Kentucky schools who take this position discourage students from reporting incidents and already puts fragile children at risk. We have more to do. I'm committed to doing my part. I'm counting on your commitment as well. All Kentucky students are. I will forever be a better person because of my time spent with the members on the task force.
Any questions?
Talk about why it's important, first of all, to identify and define what bullying is. Why is that so important?
Won't you step up and give them the details?
Well, I think that the definition, we were well into about meeting 3 before we decided on a particular definition, which is very much patterned. It's on page 4 of the report, by the way, and is very much patterned after the federal definition, which was put together by the CDC and the Department of Education and Health and Human Services. And so I think the broad, it's unwanted, it's verbal, physical, or social behavior. That's broad. Among school-aged children that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated. It has the potential to be repeated over time and can happen anywhere. And I believe that we wanted to do that to give both parents, community leaders, and schools an opportunity to put their own policies and programs in place to begin to deal with this early instead of waiting until kids are in so much distress that they try suicide, or actually we know commit suicide, and have found out that later that they've been involved in a lot of bullying by 1 or 2 students. We heard terrible, disgusting stories from family members, parents, administrators, and community leaders as we went through these 6 meetings. And really, I think by having a definition that is broad and shows repeated abuse, it does begin to allow folks to get on the same page as we're implementing programs.
What kind of cost are we talking about? that here? And where's it going to come from?
Well, it's going to come from the state budget, of course. We don't want to really throw out. This morning we were making some estimates. There's been one of the recommendations is an office, but there's a bipartisan group of legislators here who I will tell you they were at all the meetings. They traveled when we traveled. They put this as a priority. And so they have asked my staff and Kentucky Department of Education staff to work with LRC. We will be doing that very quickly to put a fiscal impact analysis on this, as well as to look at the pieces of this that can be put in legislative language. So this is not expensive, considering how do you put a price on the anguish that kids are feeling. I'm sure that Morgan, there's not a price on the bullying that she went through. So it's a small price to pay to help community leaders, educators, and parents really better learn how to deal with it and to help folks put policies in place. Also, possibly to even investigate someone who seems to be a repeated, regardless of which school system they're in. We heard one story about a young person who had been moved to 3 or 4 different schools and continued to bully others. And so we have police represented, business leaders on our group. So I think it will be a very small investment for a huge payoff at the end of the day.
With the change in administration, how do you keep this from falling through the cracks?
Behind me are some very committed people. And I would venture to say they're not going to let it fall through the cracks. This is an extremely serious problem, and I think we all know that. We all acknowledge it. The key to addressing this is to make sure we keep it on the front burner. There will be a transition to the next governor and the next administration. And in that transition, this issue will be right at the top of the list of things that we point out to the incoming administration that should be grabbed hold of and should be addressed as quickly as possible. And as I mentioned, these people standing behind me have invested almost a year of their lives in this effort, and they're determined, and I'm determined for as much as I can do as an outgoing governor to make sure that this stays on the front burner and that the next administration addresses it and the next legislative session addresses it. Okay, thank you all very much.
Governor, the group would like to have a picture.
We would love to do that.
So if we could do that. Actually, is everybody okay doing it here?
Sure.
All right, great. That way I know the governor has a schedule, so he might not be able to go out on the steps with us.